Hello, I'm Mary, and this is our next lesson in the Eat More Plants program. This is lesson number 8, and it is called data drawing. So now that we understand from all the past lessons the heavy environmental impact that food can take on our planet, we are going to look at the food that we eat and the impact that it has. And the way we're going to do this is we are going to ask the question, what do I eat? And we're going to track that. So we're going to collect data for 7 days on what we eat for breakfast and what we eat for lunch. And then we're going to put that data into a chart. Now, you can collect the data by making the chart first and having it just be empty and fill it in each day. Or you can do it the way I did, is I just took my phone and took a snapshot of what I had for breakfast and what I had for lunch for 7 days, and then I filled in the chart at the end. So your chart, you know how I love charts, is gonna have 8 columns starting here, and that's a label column. And then 1 for each day of the week. And then I'll have 3 rows, and the top row will be labeling the day of the week. The next row will be breakfast, and the next row will be lunch. And you can see there, I just jotted down what I had for 7 days for breakfast and lunch. And that's your data collection. All right, so once you have your data, you are going to see things that are very interesting when you analyze it at the end. You're going to see what foods you eat, what time of day. Do you mostly eat meat for lunch? Do you mostly eat dairy at breakfast? You're also going to look at the environmental impact, and you're going to you could possibly see how healthy you eat also. So not only are we going to collect the data and look at it, we are going to make a drawing with the data, and that is going to be our art project. So let me show you what that is going to look like. Here are my data drawings that I did. So it is you're going to make a data drawing, and then you're going to have a data key that allows you to analyze the data. So this is the first one, and they can be abstract. There's my data key. Here's the next one. And there's my data key. And this one's more representative. You can see it looks like a plant of some variety. And then my data key is horizontal or vertical. And then this is more abstract. And this is oriented portrait. And my data key is oriented portraits. So, pretty fun, right? Who knew data could be so beautiful? So first thing you're going to do is you are going to gather your supplies. So before I give you art instruction, I want to review the things you're going to need. You are going to need 7 days of data and your data chart. We already talked about that. You're going to need an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, preferably drawing paper because it's a little thicker and has some texture. You're going to need color pencils, and then you're going to need a regular pencil because we're going to sketch out our design first and then move to color. Okay, so that's your supply list. So let's dive into art instructions. All right, so you have your 8.5 by 11 piece of paper like this, and you're gonna fold it in half. That way it separates where you're gonna have your art and your data key. All right, so for each one of these, no matter what you design, you're gonna start out with 7 fan shapes, and each fan shape is gonna represent a day of the week. So for here, this is the fan shape I'm talking about. You can see that kind of fan shape. And this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you can see here, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you can see each one, here's the fan shapes. Utilizes that shape. And inside of that shape, you're going to draw a line, and half of the fan is going to be for breakfast. The other half of the fan is going to be for lunch. So I want you to have 7 fans representing 7 days a week, but you can configure them in any way you want. Like I said, they can be abstract, they can be representative, but what I do want is the composition to be balanced and aesthetically pleasing. So how do we do that? You start out with taking your paper and cutting it in half crosswise and cutting it in half vertically. So let's get my handy dandy dry erase board and I will show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so we are going to sketch out our fans and I'm going to show you how to arrange them in a balanced, aesthetically pleasing way. So you've got your folded piece of paper. So this represents half of your 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And we're going to start out with this design. All right. So what I do is I split my piece of paper. I draw a very, very light line with my pencil horizontally across the center and vertically across the center. All right. So now I know where the middle is. And then on most of the designs, you're going to, out of seven's an uneven number. So you're going to want 3 on one side of the design, 3 on the other side, and 1 in the middle. So if I'm configuring this, you can see the way to start out is I start out with a fan that is in the center. I sketch it out, and there's my fan. Now I know I need to have 3 on each side. So now what I do is I'm going to kind of sketch an arch that lets me know about where I'm going to want my fans. So now I need to fit 3 over here. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to do the same over here. 1, 2, 3. All right, it's not perfect, but you will take more time. So once you've got your 7 fans, then you want to think about the things the other lines that you might use. So in this configuration, I did a fan of fans. So then I know where my center point is down at the bottom. You see that center point? Because I have this line here. So I'm going to do this, go down the center, and then I'm going to have all the rest of them go to the center. And you can see how I'm starting to have a visually appealing and balanced composition. All right, let's go to another one. Let's go to this one. So this is a vertical configuration, and you can see there's 3 on each side and 1 at the top center. So I'm going to start here with the 1 at the top center. Do here. There's my top center. Now I know I need 3 on each side, and I know that if I'm going to do 3 on each side, I probably want to have 1 in the center here because I'm taking up this whole space. So I'm going to do 1 here, 1 here, and 1 in the bottom section. 1 here, 1 here, and 1 in the bottom section. Now I'm going to do my lines that bring them together. And in this case, I wanted it to look organic. So I try not to have straight lines. I kind of had my stem curving, and then I have kind of curving lines going out to my flowers. All right, so my next design, this one, is just fans straight up and down. So I know that I want to have 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom and 1 in the middle. So I start with my middle fan. And this design, I was doing sections with patterns in it. So I wanted my fans to be really open. So I'm starting out with a very wide open fan. And there's 1. Now I need to fit 3 here and 3 here. And I'm seeing that this is looking on the kind of bigger side. I don't know if I'll be able to fit them all. So I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. And then I'm going to kind of mark out 1, 2, 3. All right. So now I know I can fit them all. And you do it up here. Got to fit 3 in, so 1. There we go. And so now you're seeing my trick. I'm not doing a great job at it because I'm going fast. At getting a balanced composition with my 7 fans. And remember, again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I usually start from left to right, because that's how you look when you read. And I started from the top down here. I went Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All right, so the last one does not have 3 on one side and 3 on the other, does it? It has 1 in each corner and 3 in the middle. So I made my composition a 4 and 3 composition. So what I did was I used my 4 corners, and here I made right angle fans. And it's looking balanced because I have my 4 corners already. And then I knew I wanted to have 3 in the center, so that was a little trickier, trying to get it balanced. I had to erase a few times to make it even. All right, and that is how you use horizontal centered line, vertical centered line to make a balanced composition. Okay, something I neglected to mention was we are going to make a really fun frame for our data drawings. So don't get your fans too close to the edge. You can see here, I have a fun frame. So you don't want your fans to be too close so they interfere with the line of the frame. But if they do, it's no big deal. You can see here, my fans kind of went off the page and I just stopped the lines of my frame. All right, so I came up with some ideas of fan configurations for you to inspire you, but of course you are going to come up with ones I couldn't even imagine. So I have some that look abstract and some that represent something. So this is kind of a balanced abstract where I have 3 down the middle and 2 on each side. This one looks like a clover. I used 4 around there and then 2 little clovers there. This one is kind of like a tree. This is butterflies. And you can see one of my butterflies only has 1 wing. I made some poppies. This is another abstract, putting 3 on each side and 1 in the center. Then I have an asymmetrical abstract, so it's purposely not balanced. There's more on this side of the composition than this side. And then I did totally random, which if you want to do that, you can do that too. And you can see how I used other lines to create something that represents something real, like the body and the antenna of the butterfly, or I chose not to have additional lines in some of these abstract configurations. So you come up with your own design, or you can use one of these. Okay, so moving on, we are going to go through this together. You've got your sketched out fans and your configuration. And you probably recognize this configuration. It's from one of my examples. So one thing that I didn't mention was make your fans as large as you possibly can and still have them fit in a balanced, aesthetically pleasing way. You don't want little tiny fans because then you won't have enough space to put the data in, the data symbols in. And you want to have some space for your data symbols so they look nice and they're not crowded. The other thing is, so I have pretty sizable fans here that I could fit. And actually these I'm looking at, maybe they could be a little bit larger because I have the space and they don't run into the other fans. So I'm going to make these a little bit larger. Largen those up. Now the other thing that you need to do is you need to split your fans in half, because one half is going to be breakfast and the other half is going to be lunch. So in one half you'll put breakfast data and the second half you'll put lunch data. Okay, so all these get a light center line. And also, this is a point, you're still just using pencil. You're going to erase those horizontal center lines and vertical center lines. So now you have a nice, neat composition, which each fan split into breakfast and lunch. So we have our basic outline, and we're not going to put data in yet. We're going to start on our data key. But in order to start on our data key, we need to think about what we're going to use our data for. We're going to look at that data, and we're going to have 2 to 4 observations about the data. And then we'll create our data key, okay? So for right now, let's go ahead and write at the top of this data key. Oh, my Y got a little crazy. And then let's move on and talk about observations. All right, so we are going to look at possible observations of the data that we collected. So the first one I'm going to require, and that observation is the type of food and the carbon emissions for that type of food. So the first observation is going to be, you're going to look at your data, what you ate for breakfast. I ate avocado toast. So you've got two types of food, avocado and toast. And you're going to, your observation is going to be, what type of food is that? Is it a plant? Is it dairy? Is it egg? Is it pork, etc.? So that's the one that's required. So the type of food and the CO2 emissions for that food. Then the other observation choices are unlimited as long as those observations are related to the environmental impact of the food or the health of the food, how healthy it is for your body, that food. And here I made a cheat sheet with the food observations. This one is required, and these are the ideas I talked about. How nutritious is it? How processed is it? What's the source of the food? What's the packaging? Organic, sugar. But please remember, it needs to be related to the environmental impact of the food or how healthy the food is. So now you get to think and choose some observations. So once you have in your mind what those are going to be or not be, you need to attach symbols to each observation. So I have made another cheat sheet with all of the observations that I suggested as possibilities here. And then I made a list of all the different types of symbols you can use to represent those observations. Okay, so you can use color, you can use pattern, you can use line texture, you can use symbols, you can use line length, and you can use kind of yes or no. Like this is the yes, this is the no. Sugar, no sugar. Local, not sugar. Local, not local. All right, so let's do one together. So I'm gonna get my dry erase board and let's take a look. So we're gonna start here, and this is going to be breakfast. So we'll go breakfast, lunch, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay, so our first one is required. That what is required is the type of food and the carbon emissions. So if we look at this example, we're going to be looking down in this corner. That's the corner we're going to do right here, and that is our first breakfast. All right, so I've got my first breakfast here, and I ate 3 things for breakfast if I look back at my data chart. Okay, so my 3 things I ate for breakfast was, it was an egg, sausage, and mushroom scramble. That's what I had for breakfast. So that's 3 things: egg, sausage, mushroom. So I'm going to split my breakfast into 3 parts. One, two, three. Egg, sausage, and mushroom. So now on my chart, what I've done is I've chosen for my symbols, I've chosen color. Let's take a look at that. So you can see here, so you can see that each food is represented with a triangle of color, and each one has its own color. And for each food, we show how many pounds, approximate pounds, of CO2 emissions for that food. So if I know I had egg, I know that the first triangle needs to be light green, right there. Then if I had sausage or mushrooms, which is a plant, I know that triangle is going to need to be dark green. And if I had sausage, which I know is pork, that triangle is going to need to be blue. Okay, so what I do is I look here, and that's what you see. You see the light green for the egg, the dark green for the mushroom, and the blue for the sausage. And that's what we're going to do here. So our light green is going to be the first part of the little triangle. There's my light green. And then I've got a dark green for my mushroom, which represents plants. And then I fill in blue for my sausage that's in my scramble that represents pork. And there is how you do that. Okay, so that's the first example of the type of food, which is the first observation. So next, you can do additional observations. In fact, I want you to do additional observations. So let's do an example of another observation. So let's do the observation of, is it healthy? Is it healthy, moderately healthy, or unhealthy? Let's see what that looks like. So I go to my key, and here you can see I have symbols, yellow symbols. I did a yellow triangle for healthy. I did a curling symbol, like a pig's tail, for moderately healthy. And then I did a zigzag for unhealthy. So what I would do is I'd put my zigzag here. Let's get a little closer. And a zigzag, the curlies, the pigtail, and then I'm doing this for the unhealthy. So that's my second observation. My first observation is a triangle of color. My second observation is the shape that's going outside that particular food. And you can leave it at that. You can just have the one required observation and the second observation. But let's look at an example. Let's look at an example of a third observation. And this we won't do on the board. This will look at one of my art pieces. So another observation that we talked about that's possible is doing local or not local. So how is it sourced? Local or not so local? So you can see here on this one, I use triangle symbols. So a triangle symbol filled in with red means it's locally sourced. The triangle symbol filled in with black means it is not local. So you can see here, for each, I used patterns for the type of food here. For each food type over here, I created a symbol that showed whether that specific food was local or not local. Okay, so that is our conversation about observations. So before you actually start filling in your observation data, even though I did it here, I did it to just show you what they were going to look like. You need to do your data key first. So you should have your data key all done. Then you go back and get your data and fill in your design. Okay? So on the data key, the number one thing you want to do is the title, which we already have, okay? And then next you're going to do a number one, and you're going to identify the fan and what the fan represents. So you're going to draw a fan. In this case, it's going to look like this. And then you're going to put what that fan equals. And in this case, well, in all of them, number one, the fan always equals, each fan is equal to 1 day. Equals each fan is 1 day. And you are going to write very neatly. Okay? And then I identified Monday, bottom left. Monday, bottom left. And you also want to let the reader know breakfast and lunch, or lunch and breakfast. So I'm going to go breakfast. And yours, of course, is going to be neater, lunch. Okay, and that's the number one thing you want to put on your data key. All right, your number two thing is the required observation, which is what type of food is it and what is the carbon emissions, right? So it depends on what you are using to identify your food, what's going to go here. So if we're looking at this example that I did, I'm going to put a triangle. Actually, I'm going to make a pretty big triangle because there's lots of different foods. Okay, and I'm going to split that triangle. So this section is equal to breakfast. And I'm going to split that triangle. I'm going to show all the different types of food and the colors that they represent. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 types of food. So I'm going to split this into 8 sections. And I know I'll split it in half and then 4 for each of those. So I'll split it half again. And like this. So each one of these little diamonds is going to be a food color. A color that represents a food. So this, you can see I've shown you a couple times. That is the key. And you're going to write that key. And your colors don't have to be the same. But for each color, what food does it represent? Okay, so let's say plant, milk, and you're also going to put what the carbon emission is for that. And I will hold this up as a cheat sheet. We know that plants have approximately, depending on the plant, 1.6 pounds CO2e. And you'll continue that all the way down on your data key. So let's say the other observation you did was, like I actually did on this art piece, which was how healthy is it? So I'm going to go number 3 over here, and I'm going to say yellow symbols equal, and then I'm going to put the yellow symbols. So there will be healthy, moderately healthy, mod healthy, and unhealthy. And again, you will space this so it looks much neater. This is quite messy. And remember, healthy is a orange triangle, upside down triangle. And moderately healthy is the squiggles. And then unhealthy is the zigzags. And you will have it better lined up. So that is how you do the data key. Then, once your data key is complete, and you want to have this written very neatly, so do it first in, perhaps first in pencil, and then overwrite in your black color pencil, so it's balanced and looks very tidy. Then once you have that, then it's really easy to go back in and refer to your chart and look at each meal, breakfast and lunch, and each food, and fill in the information on the section. So your first breakfast, there's my 3 foods, and this is the observational data that I have for those foods. All right, I have a data key cheat sheet, of course. So now it's time for you to do this. You fill in your fan that says breakfast, lunch, and then you're gonna say each fan is 1 day. Monday is, and you'll say blank. And then number 2 is gonna be some symbol. It might be a line, it might be a pattern, it might be a texture, it might be a color, equals a particular food type and a certain amount of CO2 emissions. And here you have, for this, these are all different options. These are the different options you could use. So remember there's 8. So you could use, for foods, you could use colors, you could use textured lines, you could use symbols, and those are all the things you can use to represent all the different types of food. And then you do the same thing with other observations and other symbols. So that first one, I'm just going to go through and let you look at these. So this is if I'm using color to represent each food type. Here is if I'm using pattern. And you can see here, patterns equals the type of food. And here I have plant is a stripy pattern, milk is a crisscross pattern, pork is side circle pattern. Here I'm using line texture to represent each type of food. And you can see I have different line textures to represent different types of food. And then on this last one, I used, rather than a triangle filled in with color, I have color for the plants, but it's a line of color for each type of food. So just to review your different options for food. So now you're ready to fill in your fans with color. So really think about, when you're doing your data key, what colors you want to use and how you think they look together. So I really gave that some thought, and you can tell. So on this one, when I was doing my data key, I wanted it to be all cool colors. So I did greens and blues and gray. And I thought that would look beautiful all together, which you can see they look pretty nice together. And then I have yellow being my pop, a warm color to pop out. So then on this palette, I decided to go very simple. So I'm doing patterns, and that's what's important to me. I really want to see those patterns bold. So I went for a palette of black and white and then red. So I used red here for my local, not local, and I used dots, an empty circle or a filled in circle, for my observation of packaging or not packaging. So you can see very bold, only using black, white, and red. Then for this one, I wanted to have a beautiful palette of warm colors to represent this nice flower. So I knew, now I used line and with texture to represent my plant, but I used color to say how nutritious is that particular food. And so for my palette for that, you can see I used a really soft, pretty colors that go together. And I used purple as my outline. And then I have my other soft, warm colors on the inside. So really give, and this, my last one, I used a lot of different colors. I wanted it to be colorful. So give your colors some thought as you're doing your data key, and think about what's gonna go well together. All right, so here is where you get your colored pencils, you fill in your key, your data key, and then you go ahead and fill in your art piece, your fans, with the color that is appropriate that you've identified in your key. Speaking of color, it is getting brightly colored out here, so I'm gonna put my hat back on. All right, so last but not least, once you have all your data filled in and you've gone over your fans and any of the connecting lines with color pencils, so you should have no regular pencil left. Your whole piece should be completely covered in color pencil. You can see you don't see any pencil lines left. You're going to do your border. And for your border, you're going to do double lines all around the outside, and you're going to pick a color that is complementary. So pull a color from your design. So you'll notice I did the outside of these flowers in purple, so I did my frame in purple. So you're going to frame, go along the edge with 2 lines together. You don't need to use a ruler. It's okay if they're loose and a little bit not perfectly straight. And then you're going to pick a design feature for each corner. And on this one, they're kind of like half flowers. And then you're going to take that design feature and put it next to the data key title. Just makes your title look nice. So you can see here, I have leaves as my feature in the corner, and I put those around the data key title. And here I incorporated those triangles that mean local or not local, and I use those on my corners. And then here I use just blue squares. And did I mention that you're going to frame both your artwork and the data key? So it's a nice finished piece of work, even though it's data. So the last thing we're going to think about is we're going to analyze the data. We're going to look at what we drew, what you ended up with, and think about what it tells you. All right, here's my last cheat sheet. It's a border ideas cheat sheet. And here are a bunch of border corner ideas and colors. But you, of course, can come up with something fabulous. It is not one of these. All right, last but not least, analyze your data. So that's what I did. I looked at my breakfasts and lunch and thought about what I saw. So the first thing you might want to look at is when do I eat what types of food? So when I looked at my data drawings, I discovered that I eat mostly plants, most breakfasts. So lunch is where I incorporate meat or non-plant-based foods. So now I know if I want to eat more plants, my breakfast is good, and I really want to focus on incorporating more plants into my lunch. So you can look at when do you eat what foods. The next thing you can think about is what do you eat? If you're not eating a plant-rich food or a plant-based food, what are you eating? And what I observed in my data was I really don't eat that much meat. I don't eat that much beef or pork, but what I do eat a lot of is cheese. So now, after my analysis, I know that's something I want to think about trying to find a plant-based substitute for, or plant-based foods to replace cheese in some of my meals. Okay, so when are you eating what? What are you eating? And the last thing, and this is pretty important, is how nutritious or how healthy are the things I'm eating? Because just because it's plant-based doesn't mean it's healthy. So let's take two examples. This is plant-based. This is a package of juice boxes, and it says organic. It's got fruit in it. This is fruit punch, and the problem is it is plant-based, but when you look at the ingredients, each box has 22 grams of sugar. That is not healthy. So plant-based isn't always healthy. Let's take another example. Pop-Tarts. So this is also plant-based. There's no meat in this. It's got wheat in it, which wheat is a plant. Flour, they make the flour from the wheat. It's got blueberries in it, which is a fruit. But that doesn't mean it's nutritious. It's got packaging on the outside also. It's got packaging on the inside. And each Pop-Tart has 70 grams of carbohydrates and 36 grams of sugar. So just because it's plant-based doesn't mean it's healthy. So you really need to think about those things. And when I looked at my data, what I noticed was most of my meals, my lunches and my breakfasts during the week are actually plant-based. No, my breakfasts are mostly plant-based. My lunches have meat and cheese here and there, but they're pretty healthy. On the weekends is where I eat plant-based foods, but they're not necessarily healthy. So that is an area I know that I can focus on. So you get to do art, and you get to analyze your eating habits and look at what you can improve on. Okay, have some fun.